The Biden administration's plans for their detractors are really starting to crystallize and show themselves. At the same time as we're seeing the announcements of the aggression and the uptick in the arrests around the Jan 6 event, along with the FBI and other federal agencies creating the domestic violent extremist, they are for sure planning on adding the people who talk about Jan 6, the people who talk about November 2020, and the people who talk about the jab, all into the same bucket. And if you're somebody like me who's in the wrong side of all those issues according to the mainstream and on a YouTube channel, it's almost like you just want to throw your hands up at this point, right? I never thought that I would see the day where somebody in a presidential administration would stand up in front of the American people and announce that they would be monitoring text messages, not private messages, not AOL chats. No, your freaking text messages. And it didn't even cause a ripple. Didn't even cause a ripple. You know, when they start rounding up dissidents, as they are, because they're going to call the people political dissidents, the ones that they round up, you guys, I don't even think it'll make a ripple. I don't think people will even notice. The administration has labeled people who disagree with them about the efficacy of the jab and whether or not should be pushed on children as murderers. When you look at the rhetoric coming out of the president's mouth, out of his own mouth,
they're killing people. I mean, it really...
The Biden administration is casting conservative opponents of its CV jab campaign as dangerous and extreme. Recognize the wording? Adopting a more aggressive political posture in an attempt to maneuver through the public health conundrum. And you know what that conundrum is, right? He's hit a wall with getting more people jabbed because everybody who wanted it has got it now, and everybody who doesn't want it is not going to do it no matter what he does. You can offer lotteries and say people aren't going to get benefits. You can tell people they can't work. Listen, there's a population that's not going to get this thing. And we're going to go over this later, but sending people door to door, which they said they're not going to do, right? So let's be clear. They are sending people door to door, but they're not, quote, government agents, and they're not going to, quote, force you into this, right? They are members of the local community that have been hired by government agents, and they're there to write down whether you have or have not gotten your jab, not force you to get one, right? So they're making a list. All these friggin' lists. There's the dozen people responsible for all CV misinformation. There's the list of people at the Jan 6 event. There's the list of conservative commentators that people who were at the Jan 6 event followed, liked, and shared. What the hell? And not only is it a list now, but the government makes its list and gives it to Facebook to check twice so that they can say, we're not doing it, because if we were doing it, that'd be a violation of the Constitution. We've got this all-powerful, all-encompassing corporation that's going to do it for us. It's the government working hand in hand with a giant multinational corporation to run the government. What is that called again? I can't remember what that's called.
In regular touch with these social media platforms, and those engagements typically happen through members of our senior staff, but also members of our COVID-19 team. Given, as Dr. Murthy conveyed, this is a big issue of misinformation, specifically on the pandemic. In terms of actions, Alex, that we have taken, or we're working to take, I should say, from the federal government, we've increased disinformation research and tracking within the Surgeon General's office. We're flagging problematic posts for Facebook that spread disinformation, also with the public, with all of you, to create robust enforcement strategies that bridge their properties and provide transparency about rules. You shouldn't be banned from one platform and not others for providing misinformation out there.
The White House has decided to hit back harder on misinformation and scare tactics after Republican lawmakers and conservative activists pledged to fight the administration's stated plans to go, quote, door to door to increase the jab rates. The pushback will include directly calling out social media platforms and conservative news shows that promote such tactics. It's not government officials coming by making you do things you don't want to do. It's locals hired by government officials coming by to make you do things you don't want to do and writing a list about it. That's the fact check. That's the fact check, Jack. And I'm so sick of these fact check people saying this is a false statement because of semantics. They have a thing called partially true, partially false. Am I correct? So it's when something is semantic and you could read it one way or the other. Maybe that's what it's for. You can't say, oh, you're lying. Government officials aren't coming by your house to make you do things you don't want to do. Your neighbors are being hired by government officials to come by and make you do things you don't want to do. They say 99.5% of deaths due to the CV are among people who are unjabbed. I cannot even talk about that on this channel, but go look into it. Biden-allied groups, including the DNC, are also planning to engage fact-checkers more aggressively and work with SMS carriers to dispel misinformation about jabs that is sent over social media and text messages. Unbelievable! These people's assertion about the door-to-door vaccine checks is that it's not being done by government agencies or jackboots. It's being done by locals. Okay, let's talk about that for a second. Calm, relax, cool. The Political article says that they have gotten to a spot where they can't move the rates of vaccines forward because the people who are not getting the jabs are the adamant refusers. Okay. They already know a lot of those people are Trump supporters, conservatives, and generally people right of center. So we know the demographic of the people who are not getting the jabs. We know that the Biden administration knows the demographic of the people who are not getting the jabs. They're out there saying it. They're Trump supporters. It's that damn MAGA. Okay, so you know you have a list of MAGA. And that's who you're going to go knock on doors of. Okay, that's bad enough, but let's continue this out. Who is going to volunteer to go knock on doors and make a list about who and who hasn't gotten jabbed? What political ideology is going to be the majority in that circumstance? I understand there's conservatives who have gotten the shot, and there's lots of conservatives who are falling down on the everybody needs to roll up their sleeve side of things, but in general, the activists, the people who are going to be motivated enough to go knocking doors, we all know who these types of people are. So we know who's going to sign up to go knocking on doors, and we know who the type of people are who haven't gotten jabbed. And the Biden administration's genius idea is to push these two people in each other's face over and over and over again, and to basically have these antagonistic pro-jab people go knock on door after door after door of people who are on the dead opposite of their political ideology, on the dead opposite of the way that they see the world. Do you think that this might increase conflict, especially between people who have chosen not to get this medical procedure and people who have chosen to do it? It seems to me like this would cause a little bit of conflict. And it's so obvious who's going to be getting their doors knocked on and who's going to be knocking on the doors that you cannot tell me that the Biden administration has not recognized the fact that this is going to be creating conflict after conflict in city after city, in state after state across the country. And they're going for it. It's just insane. Psaki says that, oh, well, we've had people doing this for months, right? That's her defense when people start losing their minds about this nonsense. And they have, because there's, I forget the name of the one in Pennsylvania. They've already been across my door. So yeah, they've been doing this for a long time. That's her defense, right? And so the Politico article goes on to interview one of these people who's been doing this for quite some time, Bridgeland, right? Bridgeland said his group had already seen a shift on the ground with people shutting doors in their faces because they don't want to get jabbed. His biggest concern is that these lies convince communities who are already wary of the jabs, creating sects of the country where the virus just bounces among the unvaccinated. Oh my God. The assertion here is that the shift is because of the conservative commentators, when in reality, common sense dictates that when you get to the end of the list of people who were on the fence about getting the jab, and all you're left with is the people who are not getting it, that you're going to get some more doors slammed in your face there, Hoss. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's people radicalizing people. Because listen, all this talk about murder, it's literally killing people. And you know, Jen Psaki strikes me as the type that abuses the word literally, but she's serious when she says that. It's literally killing people. And what does that do? Well, that makes any purveyor of what the government says is misinformation, or more accurately, any purveyor of what Facebook says is misinformation, is a murderer. He's literally killing people. That's what they said. So, on to the domestic violent extremist list you go, buddy. And guys, we've gone over all the policy letters that have turned this domestic violent extremist, or DVE, thing into a real thing here in the country. I showed you how the post office is monitoring people. I showed you how those fusion centers are monitoring people. We've been over all of it. Now the administration is admitting straight up that they're going through SMS text messages. Facebook is working with the administration to censor people on their platform. You guys, Facebook is working with the government in agreement to censor people's speech. This is a big problem. A big one. The Biden administration is now planning to release a list of conservative social media influencers that were followed by Jan 6 defendants that questioned the integrity of the 2020 election. This list also includes members of Congress, per White House officials. So, this list of brand new list of domestic violent extremists, these are people who, well, the people who trespassed on Jan 6 like to listen to them on the radio. So, here we go. Onto the list you guys go, and you'll be in the domestic violent extremist bin with the people who push out vaccine disinformation bunny ears out. And also anybody who questions the results of the election. I can't cover what's going on in Georgia and Arizona. Like, the only thing I can do is like lightly mention it in passing, because I've been directly told by YouTube no more content questioning the integrity of the 2020 election. This is insane, you guys. And all of this is happening in the face of people like myself having been harassed, having my accounts permanently disabled, had received strikes, had 23 videos removed from YouTube over things that now I can say about Origin, about all kinds of things. So you have these entities that are already admittedly very wrong. And usually they're wrong because they've been pushing misinformation for the first 6 months of an event. But either way, whether it's intentional or accidental, they're wrong. They have a history of being wrong often. They're going to make themselves the arbiters of what's true and what's not. I know I sound dramatic, but it's a dramatic moment in time. It's almost kind of hard to follow all the things that they're releasing at once. But yeah, this is not good, you guys.
They're killing people. I mean, it really, look, the only pandemic we have is among the unvaccinated. And they're killing people.
All right, guys. Like, share, subscribe to the channel. Love y'all. Talk to you next time. Peace.